Welcome to today's Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework bi-weekly sync. My name is Garry Trinder. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, and I'm going to be your host for today on May the 4th. Very special day, of course. Yes, May the 4th be with you. So what we have lined up for you today, we have, we don't have the latest update on the SharePoint framework today. Unfortunately, Vesa is not available to be with us, but we do have the usual updates across the community projects. So PnPjs, CLI for Microsoft 365, Graph Developer Proxy, PnP reusable controls, the search web parts, and new samples as well. We'll have the optional picture time, but we have two demos for you today. The real stars of today, we have Siddharth Vaghasia, who is going to be showing us building conversation search experience for Microsoft Teams with SharePoint Framework. And after Siddharth, we have Dan Toft, who is going to be replicating the quick links web part for extensibility. After all, this is a community call. The community has a plethora of resources that you can dive into and use for whatever you need for your learning, even for your work as well, and also growing your network. So we have an absolute ton of content, video content on the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community channel. That's where you'll find all of the recordings from the community channels published to this channel. So if you haven't subscribed already, definitely pop along to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and then you'll be informed of every time there's a new video that's been submitted, just in case you missed this call and you want to catch up. We've also got a LinkedIn group for discussions. So if you're on LinkedIn and you want to join a group where everyone is discussing Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform, this might be blog posts that people have created or just asking questions as well, then it's a great place to discuss those topics with others. So again, if you are not a member of that group, but you are on LinkedIn, definitely take a look and join today. Just click the join button. I think you get access straight away. There's no approvals or anything in there as well. So it's open to everyone. Of course, we have the open source initiatives as well. We have a number of open source repositories. We have the PnP repository, Office Dev, SharePoint, and Microsoft Graph. Lots of opportunities for you to get involved in open source as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, also take a look at those repositories. We have sample galleries as well. So if you have built something and you want to share that with the rest of the community, the best place to do that is in the samples gallery. If you're not creating samples and you just want to get inspiration from the community of what other people are building and sharing, then it's a great place to start. If even if you're wanting to learn a new technology as well, it's always great to be working or learning from something that already exists out there that's real and you can see working. So all of the samples are accessible through the unified samples gallery, so you can get to that gallery using the short link aka.ms/community/samples, and there you'll find samples across Microsoft Lists, Microsoft Teams, Power Apps, Power Automate, SharePoint, you name it, there's probably a sample out there for you. And if you forget all of these things that I've just told you, there is one place where you can go to find out all about these open source initiatives, get to the samples, and obviously to the recordings and the invites to this call as well, is if you go to the homepage at aka.ms/community/home. That will get you access to everything which I've just talked about, and more. There is more in there as well. So take a look at what else there is there. Okay, so this is the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call. We have other calls that are available. We have a monthly Power Platform call, Microsoft Identity Platform call, and the Office Add-ins monthly call. Alongside this call, which runs bi-weekly as well, we have the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community bi-weekly call. We also have the Tuesday call. The Tuesday call is where we invite Microsoft speakers, so people from product groups, myself, developer advocates, who are there on the weekly Tuesday call as well. If you want to take a look at all of the calls that are available, we have the usual short link. So if you go to aka.ms/community/calls, you'll be able to find all of the invites there, add them to your calendar so you don't miss them, and it makes it easier to join as well. And obviously, all of the agendas for these calls are published in advance as well on social media. So if you aren't following the several accounts where you can get these updates on LinkedIn, on Twitter, go to aka.ms/community/meetup and you'll find the information about those accounts there. Speaking of the agenda for next week's Tuesday call, so the 9th of May, we have the usual latest news and updates from the Microsoft engineering on Microsoft 365 and Power Platform topics. We have three demos or three sessions for you next week. We have Eric Scherlinger and Avadehesh Dubey, who are going to be covering Power Automate and Microsoft Teams. We have Kathy Dew, who's going to give us the latest on the SharePoint site templates, site creation and template updates. That looks like that's going to be a really interesting one. I'm definitely going to pop along to see that. And we also have Vesa Yuvinen, who's going to give us the latest update on using SharePoint Framework for Microsoft Teams extensibility. Obviously, this is an open community call, so if you are interested in presenting, you can request to present. So if you have something that you want to show and talk about, then we'd love you to get in touch. Like I say, everyone is welcome. So if you do have an idea for a demo, then pop along to aka.ms/community/request/demo. You'll find a form and you'll be able to fill that in. We'll get back to you with a slot and get you on the call so that you can present and share your knowledge with the rest of the community. Okay, we have the caring is sharing. I'm not sure if David is still in the call. I think he's gone. He's gone to his session in Vegas, so I'll cover this. So if you're looking to get started in the open source initiatives across PnP, we have the Sharing is Caring initiative that run several sessions that can help you get started. So whether you're just new to contributing to open source in GitHub, then you've got the general first-time contributor sessions. If you want help submitting Power Platform samples as well, we have those sessions, but also other sessions for writing for the web, SharePoint Framework Developer Workstation setup, how to use the SharePoint Framework samples as well. Even if you're not a developer and you just want to get involved in maybe submitting articles to the community blog, which is just writing Markdown, then there's sessions that can help you there as well. We've also got the first time presenter sessions. So again, if you're interested in coming on this call and presenting, one, you can request to present as well, but also get in touch with the Sharing is Caring initiative and see if there's any sessions that are going to help you kind of be a first-time presenter, as well as sessions for the Microsoft 365 maturity model practitioners. And if there's anyone in the community who is looking to help on any of those sessions as well, then please get in touch with, I guess, David and Hugo. About helping out with this initiative. And if you want to find more information, go to aka.ms/sharingiscaring. We have the community recognition program. So, we want to make sure that when you are submitting samples, you're writing blog posts and sharing, your knowledge within the community, speaking on the community calls as well. We like to recognise that contribution. So these are badges that are powered by Credly, the same Credly who power the badges for certifications, the official Microsoft certifications as well. There are a whole host of different badges that you can achieve through different contributions. So if you're interested in this, then go to aka.ms/community/recognition to find out more. We're going to skip the SharePoint framework updates. Unfortunately, Vesa isn't with us today, so we're going to jump straight onto the open source projects. And we're going to start with PnPjs. Unfortunately, Julie isn't with us either, so I'll cover this slide. So version 3.5 is going to be released on May the 12th with various documentation fixes, fix for SharePoint batching, and other updates as well. So if you are using PnPjs, good to know there's a new update coming. But if you want to try out the latest nightly builds, then you can do that by using npm install at pnp/sp at v3 nightly package, and you can bring that into your projects and test out the latest features before they go into live. Yes, Dragan, sorry, yes, 3.15, not 3.5. Apologies for that. Thank you for observing. Moving on, we have CLI for Microsoft 365 version 6.7. So this was the monthly release. A bit of a shorter release this month because we had a couple of interim releases with the new release of the latest version of SharePoint framework. But we've got a couple of new commands for SharePoint. So this is around getting application customizers on a site, and also permanently removing all items from a site recycle bin. One big update that has been added as well is we've added support for non-public clouds. So if you're in like GCC High, then you can now use CLI for Microsoft 365, although there are some commands that don't quite support this yet. So they are Power Platform, Power Apps, and Power Automate commands. But if you're really interested in us adding support for that as well, please pop along to the issues list or the Discord channel as well, because this is something that we're going to be doing over time as well. And we'd like to know who out there is going to want to use these features as well. So if you want to get the latest version of CLI for Microsoft 365, you can get it from npm. So you can use the @latest tag. And if you want to use our Docker container as well, we have the latest tag there with everything that you need already packaged up to run CLI for Microsoft 365 in that container as well. So if you want to find out what all the latest updates are, there's many more than the two that I just added. If you go to aka.ms/CLI-m365/notes, you'll see the full release notes, and also some of the updates that we've made in the upcoming beta, as well as we're constantly adding new features to CLI for Microsoft 365. Okay, updates again. Sorry, it's just me this week. I'm kind of carrying the team. So Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy. So this is a tool if you are building any applications that call Microsoft Graph or even any cloud APIs, and you want to be able to simulate throttling, simulate errors and responses without changing a line of code in your applications, then it's worthwhile taking a look at Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy. We just released 0.7. So if you go to aka.ms/graph/proxy/download, you'll find all the information and the different executables and the installers for the proxy, as well as our tutorials as well of how to get started using the proxy. In this version, we've added support for excluding URLs. So this is the ability to exclude very specific endpoints that you might not want to kind of throw errors for. So we've added a bit more flexibility into the tool. We've streamlined the configuration as well to make it easier to configure the proxy to your individual needs. We've had a bit of a refresh as well, so the user interface is a little bit updated as well, looks a little bit more modern for a command line tool. And we've also made a slight update to the throttling behavior as well. We did find some behavior that wasn't what we expected, so we've rectified that. But things that are coming top of mind, so for the next release, which is going to be due around May the 31st, which will be version 0.8. We're looking at further improvements to the throttling behavior and the retry after behavior. We're looking to add guidance for caching and batching as well as looking to get CI/CD support for proxy, so you can run the proxy in your pipelines, as well as integrating with Playwright so that you can have proxy running when you're doing your visual testing, your automated testing using Playwright. Reusable SPFx controls. I don't think Alex is on the call, so I'm going to take this one as well. So we have a few updates. We have React Controls 3.14.0, which was released on the 19th of April. So this added support for SharePoint Framework 1.17.1 with enhancements for the datetime picker and various other fixes as well. And at the same date, we had the React Property Controls 3.13.0, which again added that support for SharePoint Framework 1.7.1 and the ability to control pane properties in property field collection data, as well as, again, bug fixes and various other enhancements that are in there. Special thank you to the contributors as well, who are named on the screen. I'm not going to go through everyone, but again, it's the community-led project. Everyone who's contributed, thank you very much for your input and being able to make this project even better for SharePoint developers out there. If you want to find more information, then check out the Twitter account at M365 PnP Controls. PnP Modern Search. So there we go. Nothing new, but keep calm. It's still around. It's still being used. There is the 4.8 update, which I guess it's kind of a little bit old if it's only just got the 1.15.2 update for SharePoint Framework, and it's now 1.17.1. But PnP Search is a great tool for building modern search experiences. It's definitely one of my favorite web parts as well. So if you are looking to add a little bit of the search experience to your applications, this is one of the best ways to do that. Okay. PnP SPFx samples. So I don't think there's any new samples here. But again, as I mentioned before earlier in the call, we're always on the lookout for new samples. So if you have a SharePoint Framework web part that you think, oh yeah, I'd love to share that, then go along to the sample gallery, aka.ms/m365/samples, and submit your sample and get yourself on this page, as well as getting yourself a badge for contributing as well. Okay, we have got to the optional picture time. So let's go to the together mode. So everyone turns on the cameras. Okay. So we're getting more people in there, so give it a few more moments. So everyone is popping in. There's still a little bit more space, I think. Yeah. Oh, we can see Bo's giving us an update as well on the samples as well. So yes, there are samples there. There's just waiting to be reviewed. So again, thank you to everyone who has contributed. But let's have a few seconds of everyone giving a wave, and we'll do a 3, 2, 1, and there we go. I've taken a picture without taking a picture. Our editor will do that for me. Thank you very much, everyone. And now on to the stars of today. First, we have up Siddharth. Siddharth, you with us?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Thank you. Let me get started. So thanks again for this opportunity to present my sample report here in this community call. Uh, Today, we are going to talk about a conversational search experience built for Microsoft Teams with SPFx. This sample was added to SPFx sample gallery and was being developed by collaborating with Kunj also, who could not join today, but I'm taking over the demo for him. Uh, Before we start, a little bit about myself. I am Siddharth Vaghasia. I am a Microsoft MVP and also Microsoft 365 consultant. I love to work on SharePoint, Teams app, Power Platform, etc. These are some of the social handles through which you would be able to connect with me. Then also I'd like to introduce my co-collaborator Kunj. He is also a technical consultant working around SharePoint Office 365, and he is also an active PnP contributor, wherein he also contributes to various samples, writes articles, blogs, etc. And these are some of the social handles through which you would be able to connect with him. So this is the link to the repo which we are going to talk about today. So what was the driving factor? The first thing was, with Teams usage and everything, and if we talk about a Teams channel, a typical Teams channel conversation which it would be built for a particular project, we would see there would be so much of message passing which be done, or so much of conversation happening in a particular channel conversation, and it becomes sometimes difficult to find the right message within that conversation. And also it becomes difficult to scan and locate the relevant information there, right? Now, this was a idea which I got probably an year back or so, like how we can simplify the conversation which are available for us to quickly go and find something. And that is when I started exploring, and I started the web part with a very simple idea of displaying the conversation in the tabular view. And then what happened was I showed it to Kunj, and he came up with other idea of to enhance that particular web part to have a different kind of view. And that is where, we kind of collaborated on this web part, and we were able to complete it, and we have submitted in the SPFX sample gallery. Now, these are some of the summaries or the features of what this web part would do. So first of all, this is an SPFX based web part, which is kind of enabled for a Teams tab, because it is a web part wherein whole functionality of the web part is dependent on a channel and its conversation. So it would only work within a channel conversation as in Teams tab. Okay. What it will do is it will basically display some of the newest conversation first of all on the top. So when we are talking about conversation, we are talking about the top level conversation which happens, and then you can deep dive into a specific reply within a specific conversation. Then you would have an option to navigate from directly to a specific message or within reply to the conversation. It means you would be able to directly go to that Teams post messages for you to reply or for you to refer that particular message, right? Then you would have different filters depending on what you want to use. You can filter it by the body search text. You can filter it by who has sent the message. You should filter able to filter it by mention, from and to wait, and with attachment. Okay, so these are some of the basic filters which we have implemented. So idea was to, like sometimes you might remember that okay, this message was been sent by this guy or your colleague, but you might not be able to filter it based on who has sent that message, right? And if you at least that okay, I wanted to find all the messages sent by a particular user on so and so date, or if it that he has mentioned you can also filter it based on that, and typically search text also is available. Same way you will be able to apply all the same filters to the replies within that conversation. Then you have two types of options. That is what I said, tabular view, and then you have chat format view, which we will see in the demo. And there would be a legend icon on the message where the current user is mentioned. So if you are logged in with your account on the Teams tab, and you are doing that, what you would be able to do is you would be able to say icon saying that this message you have been mentioned. And of course, we have explored to use Graph Toolkit in SPFX based web part, right? So if anyone is interested on getting started of how to use SPFx based solution and enable it Microsoft Teams, these are the reference links to which you would be able to use it. The first one being a typical way of creating an SPFx web part and enabling it manually. But definitely, if you want, you can also use the Visual Team Studio toolkit for enabling or creating a Teams tab using SPFx. So second link is specific to that. With that, let's quickly go to the demo. So what I have done is I have kind of installed the solution, and plus I have also deployed the solution and added to a particular Teams channel conversation, and we created some sample channel conversation around it, right? So this is the channel which we are talking about, and this is the Teams tab SPFx. So at the top, what you get is you get a two kind of view, whether it would be a chat view, which is this, which we are seeing right now. And there would be a tabular view also where you would be able to see the conversation message in the tables, right? And then you have all the filters around it. Now, these are the top conversations which would be there. So if you go to the post and if you see most of the top level conversations which we are seeing right now is kind of displayed at the top. And to go into a particular detailed replies of that conversation, once you hover over it, you would be able to see an icon and you click on this view reply. That is where you would be able to see all the replies of that particular top level conversation which would happen. Okay. From here, of course, you would be able to go to that particular channel, that a particular message within the post itself so that you can reply, etc. Plus, wherever based on the current logged in user, if you are mentioned in that particular message, you would see an @ symbol so that you know that these are the messages where it was specifically targeted to you or you were mentioned in that message. Okay. Now, coming to the filters, if you see here, if I wanted to filter based on a particular user, like I wanted to just filter messages being sent by a particular user, if I click on apply, I would be only able to see that particular message. Then same way you can also mention, it means you can also filter the messages where somebody else is mentioned. So if you know that you have sent a message and you have mentioned somebody, you click on mention, and if you can tap on apply, then it will come up with the message which is there. Now, other thing is by default, what we are doing is we are not showing the HTML formatted message. What we are doing is we are keeping it as a simple text message and displaying it for general purpose, because the idea here was to find a conversation and then use the conversation message button to go to that message and find the context, etc. Right? Then you can also filter any messages which are with attachment. Okay. Plus, if you click on that attachment, you would be able to directly go to that attachment also. And of course, there is, from date and to date. So if you filter a message based on a particular from date to date, you would be able to filter that message, etc. Right? And also the body text messages. So if we say like weather, and if you will apply, you would only see the message which is there. So these are the basic filters which we thought would be useful for us to basically drive that conversation. Right? Now, the other thing is once you go to the reply, once you go to a reply of a particular message, you will get similar functionality which is available wherein to, I don't know why this, yeah, okay. You will get similar functionality wherein you would be able to filter based on all the filters which are available for the messages also. And then there is that tabular view. So tabular view is where you would be able to directly find from in a simple formatted way, but in a way very much similar to what you are seeing when it was being sent, if you want to go to that message, etc. So this is a typical way to display the conversation in a simple way, so that if you wanted to find something, you would be able to use this web part to target to a particular channel conversation, and you would be able to kind of use this web part. We don't have an option to show which columns and to show to hide, but that is an idea which we can implement. But overall, you can kind of expand, collapse the columns which are available, which you can basically do it. Okay. Now, so this is everything about demo. What I'll do is I'll quickly go through demo of code walkthrough of the web part. First thing is, as I said, it is an SPFx based web part. So more or less what we are doing is how we are programming our SPFx web part. And what we are doing is we are using Graph API to basically get the conversations or the messages using Graph service client to get all the messages for that particular channel and display it. So initialization part, we are initializing graph service, the graph client and everything. Next is the main file wherein we have the state object, which would basically kind of hold all the variables which would be required to get the required functionality depending on whether it is a chat message, filtered messages, next link, expanded message ID. So basically this is the typical state object which we are doing, which we are using. Then within the main component in the render method, this is where kind of all the components come together. So we have segregated the components between different functionalities. So header component is the one which is basically nothing but displaying the search conversation header and the grid and the tabular view icons which are there. Then you have filter component, which basically takes care of rendering this filter component here, which is there. And then depending on the view being selected, you have a message view and you have a table view component which is there. And this is where we are passing a typical data is being passed to that component to basically render it. So next I would go and see, next we will see some important messages like get teams messages. So what we are doing is we are using the teams kind of SDK to get the current context, group ID and the channel ID. Now group ID would be basically the teams ID, and the channel ID would be the channel ID in which the current web part would be running. And then we have the graph service provider method, which we will see shortly. But to just get the messages and set the state object and use that state object to pass to the components which is available. Next, this is a separate method for get message replies, because the graph endpoint to get the message replies for a particular top level conversation is different, and you need to pass, or the endpoint is different, and also you need to pass the message ID inside which you need to get the reply. So this is a separate method, but very much similar. What you get is you have to pass the group ID, channel ID, but the extra thing you would pass is the selected message ID on which you are getting all the replies from. Next, this is the graph service provider class basically, and this is the class wherein we have all the methods which actually makes the graph API call using the graph client. The first one being the team/channel ID and the messages, which will give us all the messages. We are getting top 45 messages, and then we have load more button below that, wherein once you will click on load more button, it will go and get another 45 messages by using the next link icon. This is just to kind of way of getting the latest messages and then kind of trying to find all other messages if you want to do it. Then this method is where you would be able to get the data based on the next URL. So if you are getting the second page, basically we use the next link which would be written in the response and use that to get the next set of data which is available. And then this is the get message replies, which would give us the messages replies based on the endpoint teams. You pass teams ID, channel, you pass channel ID, messages, and then the message ID, and then you say the replies, and which will give you all the replies which are available, right? Next thing is the component. So what we have is, this is the message view component. Within message view component, in terms of the UI library which we are kind of utilizing here, is we are using React North Star to get the chat item kind of object to get the required look and feel, so that you don't have to develop that kind of similar experience. Then what we are doing is we are also using a read more and less, which is basically a React library, which is to kind of handle the read more, read less button on a particular content, which is very much easy to implement. We will see that. Now, coming to the important component. Okay, so this is where we are converting the HTML text to the plain text, so that we don't have to take care of rendering the messages as it is, but rather than kind of displaying and using the inner text of the div element to just display the messages which is being displayed there, right? Now, what you would now this is the main component method, wherein you have the chat component to display a particular chat. Within that, there would be a chat item, and within that there would be a chat messages. This is how a typical React North Star chat components library is being used. We can use that. What it will do is, it will basically kind of display the top level messages which is there, and then again below down it is very much similar, but that is where you would able to see all the replies to that particular messages, or you would see all the related messages there. Okay, and we are also using graph toolkit to basically use the person component to display who has sent these messages, etc., within the SPFx web part to get the required look and feel. So this is the message view component which is available. and then mention icon, of course, everything is kind of available, and all the logic whether to display the mention icon and everything would be typically based on the filter of the mentioned user ID versus the current user ID's object ID, so that you know that that user has been mentioned in that particular messages or not. Right. Now let's see the tabular view. So if I go to table view, table view is also very much similar. It's just that we are using the detail list view component from the Fluent UI to basically display the data in the tabular format. And what we are doing is we are overriding on render method of each of the columns to get the required look and feel, or to basically use certain properties to display whether it is a chat icon or whether it is a file, or to format the date time message, created date time messages, etc. And also to display the body content messages within the column itself. So this is how a typical tabular or the detail list view control can be used, right? So overall, this is the base functionality or base code, which is basically taking care of implementation. A very on a summary level, what we are seeing is we are seeing that we are using Graph API to get the data. We are using Teams SDK context, Teams context within SPFx web part itself to get the current context, group ID, channel ID, and then we are making the Graph API call, and we're using the Graph API call to basically display the data in that format. And it makes more sense when you are using this web part within the Teams channel conversation, so that it can be used as in an extended feature of what is already available within Teams for you to kind of read in a way what you kind of read to do that. Okay. Last couple of points I wanted to highlight here is for Web API permission, because we are using channel messages, so we need this channel message read all permission to be applied for us to kind of use Graph API to get the channel messages. So this permission and the scope is important, which we specified in the package solution. And lastly, how do you enable this SPFx web part as in Teams tab? So for that, in the web part manifest.json file, what we do is in the supported host, we are specifying that the supported host for this web part is the Teams tab, and that is how it would be available. Now, once an SPFx solution is deployed to the app level catalog, I mean the tenant level app catalog, because you are using and you want to make it as in enable for as in the Teams tab, which would be available for user to install that within your Teams tab. What you would have to do is you have to make sure that, you know, once you have deployed the solution, you are basically deploying it to all the sites first of all, and also you are syncing it to the Teams. Okay, this option would be enabled. Probably it's just taking some time, but basically this is where it would be allow us to enable and make this tab or this web part available for user to be used within your Teams application within the tenant itself. Okay. This one, if you want to know about it, the links which I have shared in the reference link would help you, give you step-by-step reference on what and how you can basically enable your existing web part to be enabled for a Teams team. And depending on whether your web part is just for a single supported host, which is a Teams tab, or you wanted to also use it in your SharePoint, accordingly, you can use the SDKs which are available, and you would be able to kind of find whether your current web part is running within the Teams or whether it is running in the SharePoint. Okay, so yeah, so that's it from my side. Hopefully this web part would be also useful to the community, or it will give you idea on how to kind of extend it. That's it from my side. Over to you, Garry.
It was a fantastic demo, Siddharth. Yeah, I can see in the chat there's a few questions. So obviously people have seen some interest in what you've done here. Great example of the different technologies that you've used as well in this solution. I absolutely love the code tour that you've got as well to kind of guide us through this solution as well. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on to the call today and sharing with us.
Thank you, Garry. Definitely, I'll reach out the questions. I'll reply it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, on to our next presenter. We have Dan Toft, who is going to show us how to replicate the quick links web part for extensibility. Dan, do you want to share your screen?
And there we go. So of course it's Star Wars Day, so we gotta add a bit of Star Wars theming to our slide here. My name is Dan. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant and developer based in Denmark. I'm mostly active on Twitter, where you can find me. It's over at Tandant. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this this demo that we're going to see. And there's, yeah, really just ask anything you feel like. So what is the quick links web part that I've created? Well, it sort of started off based on having a lot of clients who had the feedback that they wanted to do, they like the quick links thing, but they want a little bit more. So maybe they want to have a panel open when they click the button instead of redirecting to somewhere else. They're just like, they're 80% happy with it. And then I heard the feedback somewhere in the community as well. I think there was a GitHub issue mentioning wanting to see wanting to see Microsoft open source their quick links web part, because the drag and drop features are pretty cool. So like wanting to drag and drop things and actually be able to edit your web part more like intuitively for the users. And I thought, being a Microsoft 365 consultant, I don't actually often like build proper web parts. I kind of just botch things together. So using the property pane is not something that I do all that much, to be honest. So I wanted to like learn or be better to do that, or better at doing that. So I figured, why not like try and make a sample where I try to replicate the quick links web part, because it's got the drag and drop, it's got the dynamic property pane, and I can add like those last things that I feel like it's missing. So I figured we should start off with like a quick demo of it. So if I open up my screen here, there we go. So essentially what I've created is just a web part. I call it just PnP quick links here. Let's go ahead and open that. Move the old one just for the sake, where we have drag and drop like you expect it to be there. We can click a link. It will open up the property pane. You're able to choose things about it, change the icon using some PnP reusable controls here. And that actually works pretty well. And one thing that I also really had a like harder time than I would actually expect it to be doing was the switching context. So say you're in the default like property pane here, and you're switching up some layouts and you want to edit a link. Getting it to switch over actually took some time, and I'll show like how I did that. But what was probably actually my biggest challenge in building this thing was getting this like drag and drop feature to work the way I wanted it to. And I'll have some like small clips later of how it went during the process. But essentially, I've created like I think 80% of what the tiles quick links web part can do. We have different sizes. We have the ability to only show an icon. You can click. You can add a new link. The one thing that I decided actively not to do was audience targeting, just because I didn't feel like dealing with it. So that might be for a later demo or something. But yeah, that's essentially the web part using the PnP reusable control web part title as well. So really just trying to replicate what Microsoft is doing out of the box so we can do better or do more with it. One of the things that I had a request for like a while back and just said you can't really do is something as simple as putting in anything here that is not a HTTPS link. So in this case, opening a Word document as a template, or even linking to OneDrive files. Those are like Office URI schemes. For those of you that are not familiar, I will go ahead and I'll post a link in the chat for those, which is essentially just a way to like open up Word or interact with the desktop clients. But the default quick links web part will not accept any links that is not HTTPS enabled. It will essentially just add HTTPS at the front. The link will break. So that's a thing that I really wanted to like get working, and that works nice here. I can publish the site, and if I click it, it will ask me to open up Word. Now I am not signed in on the desktop client on this machine, so I will not open it, but it does actually work. So that's actually like the main like driving force behind building this web part, and obviously getting the practice. Yeah, so let's move on with the slides. So I promised some like demonstrations of the attempts at drag and drop. You can see in the lower part of the screen. That's kind of how it went for a little while. I think there's a Twitter thread somewhere out there of me getting more and more slowly insane, trying to get it working. It took like 3 or 4 hours because I was using a library that did not support what I was trying to do. And then I demonstrate on the right how the default like column view in SharePoint lists. I realize now there's a lot going on the screen. The default like view in SharePoint, the board view, doesn't even support this. It just sorts by whatever column you've set it to sort by. So you can't actually drag and drop the cards at different like positions. And figuring out how to do that actually took like quite a while. What I ended up doing was I was looking at the DevOps because it has a like you can see more in the DevOps boards, and you can see that they're using some kind of number to position the card. But I couldn't really figure out how they were doing it. So what I did is I thought, well, I'm going to need some kind of variable that I'm sorting by. So I called that the sort weight. So essentially what I'm doing with the sort weight is I am saying this is like, I'm going to just sort the items by this value. And what I did is I said 0 will be my lowest value and 1 will be my highest value. That way I can essentially say anytime I put in a new tile, give it a value that is exactly in between whichever two I am working on. So let's say I wanted to enter or input a new link on the left, that would get 0.25 because that is like in between 0.5 and 0. And this way the number will essentially always stay between 0 and 1, but it will just get a very large amount of decimals in the end, but it will actually work. So adding a new one in between those two would be 0.0375. And that way, whenever I switch them around, I can always just like grab the item just before it, which in this case would like in the middle there would be 0.25 and the other one 0.5 and divide those by 2. And then if I move a thing around, so let's say I move the middle one to the left like this, it's essentially just going to be like, oh, that's 0.125 because that is in between 0 and 0.25. So looking at the code that is doing this, it is, I mean, it looks more complex than it is. One of the things that took me a little bit of time was getting it to work in the scenario where you don't have enough links. So if you have 10 links and you're dragging it to somewhere where there's 2 new links, that works awesome. But sometimes you're going to be moving it where it is now essentially its own neighbor in the calculation, which took a little bit of work. Of course, the sample links will also be provided, where you will find like the code if you need it. I decided not to really share the code on screen in Visual Studio this time. But what is happening is we're taking all the links and we're sorting those by the sort weight. That way we have an already sorted array, which is what we're also working with in the UI. So I'm just like duplicating the array. And then I wrote this getAverage function that just makes sure that if the previous one is null, I'm handling it and giving it the correct one. And just looping through and essentially just returning the sorted array. Yeah, there we go. And moving on to the other part of the demo, the property pane. The property pane is one of those things that is actually really awesome about working with SPFx, but like I said in the beginning, that I don't get to use all that often. I tend to just hard code values. But working with it, it's actually really neat how you can build something that is so generic, you can actually hand it out to multiple people. And they can configure it based on their needs. So here we're just seeing like the same thing I sort of went over in the demo, that you can change properties and it interacts live with the web part. And I guess based on that, I like took a few learnings that I want to keep in mind the next time I'm building something where I'm using the property pane. Those are, you can use arrays in the property. I guess we can call it the property back. I don't really know if there's a name for that. So essentially, you can just like use square brackets and you can just put a number in there. And that actually works on accessing the data in the like property back, let's call it that, the property control JSON thing, or whatever it's called, which is really neat. And I think it's also what there's the PnP controls, that reusable control that you can use, that it essentially gives you a list you can use. I think that does the same thing. Another thing is it's actually possible to trigger opening the property pane directly from your like code. Now, having used the PnP like placeholder control thing for a while, obviously I would have known that you could do it, but never thought to do it in a solution. That was really neat, and a nice thing to keep in mind, that you can actually like right from your web part trigger that you want to change. And lastly, something that I always did was return once from my get property pane configuration method. What I realized is there's nothing stopping you from returning several times. It's not a static JSON object. So you could actually have several scenarios returning different property pane thingies. You could also use pages in the one big one you're building, But what I find is whenever I'm actually building like a large property pane is it gets really hard to manage that large JSON object. So being able to split it out either into several returns or build the JSON object first and return it was actually like kind of a eye opener, at least for me, not having realized all those things you could actually change. Yeah, and that's about it. Thank you so much for coming and seeing the session. I will share my sample link in the chat as well. And if there are any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat or reach out either later or on Twitter. I will be available there as well. Yeah, thank you. And back to you, Garry.
Thank you very much, Dan. Again, fantastic demo. Thanks for going into detail as well. I'm sure the sorting kind of iteration, if you like, was worth it in the end, though, right? It's the process, right? Oh, it's not quite working. It's not quite working, and then hey, it's worthwhile all this time.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go back to the slides. Okay, so again, thank you to our two presenters, Siddharth and Dan, for the demos. And also thank you to everyone who has joined today's call and been a part of the call through the chat as well. It's always great to see responses. I had a chuckle whilst I had a rest at some of the GIFs that were added into the chat. So thank you very much. Okay, so again, thank you. This recording will be available in 24 hours on the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform Community YouTube channel. So you can get to that channel using aka.ms/community/videos. If you haven't already subscribed, then please do hit that subscribe button and make sure that you are kept up to date with all the latest videos from the community that are posted there. Outside of the YouTube channel, if you want to keep up with the latest updates on Twitter, we have two accounts. So there is the @Microsoft365 Dev account and @M365PnP. So again, regular updates on both of those accounts. So if you're not following, please go along there and hit that follow button. The next Viva Connections and SPFx call, so this call will be on May the 18th. And the next community call, which is the M365 and Power Platform call, will be May the 11th on the Tuesday. And like I said, all of the invites are available, all of the calendar invites and invite links are available from aka.ms/community/calls. Again, thank you to all the speakers for today and all of your input as well. Finishing a little bit earlier, so chance for a break before your next meeting. But thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.